So now that I've just pissed the entire world off, okay, and I've explained the two worldviews of imbalance, the left brain imbalance Darwinian so-called evolutionary paradigm, and the right brain imbalance creationist or spirit is superior to matter paradigm, okay, I want to ask a very fundamental and important question for people to consider. What do these two polarizing paradigms share in common? And we'll answer that question on the other side of the break. You're listening to What on Earth is Happening? We'll be right back.
Close the city and tell the people that something's coming to call. Death and darkness are rushing forward to take a fight from the wall.
I'm your host, Mark Passio. My website, whatonearthishappening.com. I left off in the previous segment asking the question, what do the two polarizing paradigms that I've just outlined share in common? What does the Darwinian left brain imbalance so-called evolution paradigm share in common with the right brain creationist paradigm, or the paradigm that postulates that spirit is superior to matter? Well, they share quite a bit in common, actually, and I think it's what we have to understand is ultimately is one of the main factors that's ultimately keeping the human condition the way it is. And the very first thing that does that, the first trait or characteristic that these two polarizing paradigms share in common, is the total dismissal of free will within the individual. The total dismissal of free will. Now just think about it. Think about it. What does the left brain imbalance Darwinian evolution paradigm say about free will? Well, it says free will is essentially an illusion. You know, it's an illusion because genes control everything. The interaction of subatomic particles and electrochemical interactions of matter in the brain are ultimately determining behavior. It's a deterministic way of looking at the world ultimately, through the idea of randomness. It's so far into randomness that it basically comes right back around to determinism and says, well, there's nothing you can really do to change because that's just your nature. That's just the way you were made. Okay? Because the particles, the physical material particles that comprise your body, your physiology, you know, they are what are ultimately determining the way you think and your behavior. Forget about epigenetics. Forget about circumstances. Forget about programming. Forget about conditioning. Forget about consciousness, most certainly. You know, forget that. And it completely dismisses the dynamic of free will. And isn't that exactly what creationism or super right brain imbalance religionist type thought does? It says, well, since God is controlling everything, of course everything's deterministic. You know, we can't counteract the will of God. Things are the way they are. Well, certainly God must have wanted them to be this way. So what good is our action? What good is us trying to change anything? The world will change when God wants it to change, not when we want it to change. You know? So free will is ultimately an illusion in the religionist paradigm. And I'm telling you, it's just like that in the New Age community, just like that. I've had New Agers look me dead in the face with a straight, serious expression on their face and say, free will is a complete illusion. There is no such thing. You don't have free will, neither do I, neither does anyone. New Ager saying that with a completely straight face. And I'm telling you, folks, if you haven't understood the importance and the reality of free will, you are not awake. At all. At all. Not a bit. You're not enlightened, you're not awake, you don't know what's really going on, you don't know the self. And you certainly don't know the dynamic to get out of the mess that we're in. If you accept either of those notions, whether coming at it from the left brain worldview or the right brain worldview, if you accept the notion that free will does not exist, enjoy the chains, morons. Enjoy the chains. I don't care how harsh you think that is. I don't care what you think of me for saying that like that. I'm not here to win a popularity contest or for you to like me. I'm here to tell the truth of how the dynamic works. That is keeping the current condition the way it is. And if you say you want freedom, and if you say you want order, and if you say you want justice, and if you say you want peace, and if you say you want prosperity, you have to understand how that dynamic works in natural law. And natural law includes free will. To align your behavior in harmony with the moral laws of creation, or to choose to live in opposition to them through your own free will. That is the gift of the creator of the universe. And everyone has it. Every being with the capacity for holistic intelligence has free will. Animals are creatures of instinct. We are not just animals. We are animals that also have the component of free will because of the level of the complexity of our consciousness, meaning that we have the capacity for holistic intelligence and understanding. Therefore, we have free will. We have the free will to move our consciousness forward epigenetically. We have free will to change our circumstances. We have free will to change the way that we think, and therefore we have free will to change the way that we behave. And if you don't accept that, you are the perfect slave. And you should be in chains. If you believe there's no such thing as free will, whether you are coming at it from this left brain Darwinian paradigm, or you're coming at it from this right brain religious paradigm, you belong in chains. As a matter of fact, you don't only belong there, that's the only condition that you can manifest. It's the only condition that you are capable of ever manifesting is slavery. So enjoy it. Enjoy it until you change your mind, until you change your thinking. Your thinking has to change for that manifested result to change. The end. It's eternally like that. Get over it. And this is the problem. This is the problem. That people want to think they can keep their flawed fundamental axioms in place and still create the kind of change that they say they want. Well, if you want to keep those flawed fundamental axioms in place that can only lead to the condition of slavery, stop saying that you want to be free, because you're a liar. The next characteristic that these two paradigms share in common, absolutely share in common, is that they completely dismiss the power of consciousness and the ability of consciousness to create change in the world, which is what I've just described. Consciousness is left at the door. Do you ever hear scientism believers really talking about consciousness, except some type of electrochemical interaction in the brain? No. They don't talk about the power of consciousness to epigenetically affect change in the world. No. And certainly, religionists often see consciousness as equated with the devil. You know, New Agers talk about consciousness, but they don't really understand what it is. You know, they think it's meditating your way into some higher state, when the way that you bring yourself into a higher state is by aligning your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. And they leave the masculine active principle at the door. They leave a third of consciousness at the door. So therefore, you might as well leave it all at the door. But none of these paradigms embrace and actually integrate deeply consciousness into their equation. None. Both of these paradigms externalize all power. The externalization of all power. Because, look, in the left brain Darwinian paradigm, this so-called evolutionary paradigm, which it's nothing of the kind, okay? Not true evolution. We are at the mercy of genes. These little molecular structures, comprised of some amino acids. We're at their mercy. These tiny little collection of atoms, they control us. We're at their mercy, like clockwork. It's just the universe is just a big wind-up clockwork mechanism, just running on its own. God's the blind clockmaker, okay? And genes control everything. And then in the right brain religious paradigm of creationism, God controls everything. So ultimately, a human being is just a puppet. It's just a wind-up toy soldier doll, a puppet on strings, We have no say in what happens to us. Everything is just being done to us. Victim mentality. Victim mentality. Can you see? Can people who are within the sound of my voice, are you really hearing what's being said? Do you understand how these worldviews have created have maintained, okay, the current human condition. They propagate it. They propagate slavery. Because they are both deeply entrenched belief systems that the human condition cannot be changed. That's what they both share completely in common. The human condition cannot be changed. And I'm here to tell you that position is 100% utterly false. The human condition absolutely, most certainly can be changed. Will it be changed is another story. Stay with us, everybody. We'll pick this up on the other side of the break. You're listening to On Earth is Happening. We're into the third hour for tonight's broadcast. I'm going to go to the phones in this section. I'm going to just simply wrap up talking about the main topic for tonight, which was the polarization dialectics regarding creation and human origins, the two brain imbalanced worldview paradigms that perpetuate the human condition. I asked the question and answered the question, what do they both have in common? Their dismissal of free will and consciousness, their externalization of all power, postulating that we are either at the mercy of genes or God, and a deeply entrenched belief that the human condition cannot be changed, which of course is a lie. It is one of the biggest lies that we face that is holding the human condition of slavery in place. Of course the human condition can be changed. Of course God doesn't want us to remain in a state of slavery. Of course we are not at the mercy of genetic code. Of course we can epigenetically change ourselves and our situation. But willpower must be applied. Knowledge must be applied. Care must be developed and applied. It doesn't just magically happen itself. So my last question, which I will begin to answer next week, I'm going to try to take some calls in the last hour of tonight's program and see if I can't give away some tickets to my seminar in St. Louis. But the question about these paradigms is, of course, both of these paradigms are leading humanity to the same place. That's why it's called a dialectic. They basically are opposames that lead to the same place. People think that they're so different. They think, oh, I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Jew. I'm so different than all of those believers in Darwinian evolution. And then people say, oh, I'm a scientist in a white lab coat. I'm so different than those people who believe in religion. No, you're not. You're both kidding yourself. You're both pranksters. You're jokesters. Okay? You're both played. You're played. Okay? You're both going to the same place, and it's called slavery because of how you think. You're puppets on strings. And not only are you puppets on strings by buying into these polarizing dialectics, you believe that you're puppets on strings by the very nature that you have accepted those polarizing dialectics. And you know what the Satanists of this world are doing? You know what the dark occultists are doing? You know what the powers that be are doing? They're laughing their asses off at you. They're laughing with big, out-of-control belly laughs nonstop, and I'm telling you, I've heard them do it. From their lips to my ears, I've been in rooms with them laughing at you. And you just keep going on believing in your absolute BS nonsense religion on both sides of that equation. Okay? Because you're being mocked. You're being mocked. And you don't even know you're being mocked. One day on the air, I don't think it'll be today, but when I develop, maybe I'll practice it off air and try to get it just right. I'm going to try to do the laugh that a Satanist unleashed in my presence one time at a ritual here on the East Coast at Walpurgisnacht. And he was mocking a cop who was watching the ritual house outside the house, okay? And protecting all of these Satanists, an armed off-duty police officer who was a member of this satanic cult. Coven, they don't call them covens, they call them grottos in Satanism. And this dark occultist who was smoking a cigar, and he was wearing a suit, and he was eating some hors d'oeuvre that they had served after the ritual, was looking outside the window through this kind of like semi-octagonal or hexagonal enclosure in the front of this house. He was looking over at the patio where this cop was standing watch at the door. And he was laughing so hard that his face became red and engorged with blood, and I thought he was going to choke on the food that he was eating. And that's how much he was mocking and laughing at this cop, calling him a complete unconscious idiot, for serving the satanic agenda, our agenda, as he said, okay? And just said, these people are our pets. They're our dogs. They're our animals on a leash. And that's exactly how they look at people. And you know what? As I've said before, people can say, oh, Mark, you're in such a dark worldview for even saying something like this. They're correct. They're not incorrect. I'm not telling you I agree with their approach or their worldview or the way they think. I'm just telling you they're correct. They are their pets, their dogs, their animals that just follow them, whatever they tell them to do. That's it. And the people who believe in these completely imbalanced worldviews are really no different. They're just absolute puppets on a string. And they've been given their belief systems by these psychopaths. They've been given their very belief systems by these psychopathic lunatics. So my question that I'll end the presentation part of tonight's show on is there any kind of a possible, reasonable, sensible alternative to these two imbalanced prevailing paradigms about human origins, about the processes that underlie creation? Well, that's what I want to try to start unpacking in a deeper way on this show. And this is setup or framework material to do that, because you have to understand the entrenched paradigms that are already at work and what they lead to. So with that having been said,